Hi everyone, thanks for checking out my video. If you find what I discuss helpful, interesting, or entertaining, it would really mean a lot if you would like and subscribe. I'm trying to build this channel to showcase my work and talk about photography topics I find interesting in hopes that others may find them interesting too. The topic of this video is to give a brief review of the Nikon EM Film SLR camera. I acquired this camera about 10 years ago, and unfortunately, it spent the majority of that time sitting in a closet. When I rediscovered it, I immediately went to YouTube to learn everything I could about the camera, and shortly after that, I went through a roll of film to test the overall function of the camera. I eventually replaced the light seals, and from there I took the pictures that are showcased in this video. The Nikon EM is a very entry-level camera. It basically has three modes: auto, which we'll get into a little bit more in a moment, bulb mode for self-timed exposures, and manual 90, which essentially locks the shutter into 1/90th of a second and should really be reserved for when you find yourself out shooting and the battery is dead. The lack of more manual control, combined with the camera being mostly plastic, is what pushes it to the entry-level side of the overall gear spectrum. But entry-level isn't a bad thing. Everyone has to get started somewhere, and this camera was the perfect camera for me when I was getting back into photography. The auto mode is essentially aperture priority mode. The ISO is set on the dial to assist the light meter. You set the aperture on the lens itself, and from there, the built-in light meter does the rest from an exposure standpoint. You still have to focus the camera, set your composition, and take the picture. But the shutter speed is handled entirely by the camera based off the available light coming into the lens. One reason why this is a great feature for beginners is that film is pretty unforgiving. Unlike a DSLR, where you get to see your exposure within moments and know whether or not you need to adjust and retake the picture, film does not allow for that. You take the picture, you finish off your roll, and eventually you send it in. And a few weeks later, you get your negatives or scans back, and then, and only then, will you know whether or not your pictures turned out okay. In some situations, you can easily retake the picture, but some moments, once they're over, are simply gone forever. With this camera, as long as you hold it steady and focus it properly, you're more than likely going to get a good picture. As far as film cameras go, you really can't ask for more as a beginner. Now, let's look at some pictures. The ones showcased on this video were shot on Ilford HP5 400 ISO film. Development was done by the Reformed Film Lab in Ormond Beach, Florida. I learned about this lab from their YouTube channel, which has some very entertaining and informative content. If you haven't seen them before, I highly recommend checking them out. Any issues you noticed with the pictures were solely the fault of myself, as the development far exceeded my expectations. The location of these photos is a local gun range located exactly 2 minutes from my house. I mentioned in my intro video that one goal of mine was to find interesting things to take pictures of right here in my area, and this is about as close as it gets. The pictures shown here are the trap range followed by the pistol bays. Both photos were taken because I was practicing with aperture and depth of field. These were both shot between f11 and f16. The real interesting place on the property was Cowboy Town. This is an area set up to host monthly cowboy action meets and the annual Roundup event. At these shoots, participants dress up in period-accurate attire and shoot guns that are also era-appropriate. They're measured on time and accuracy. The overall area created some very interesting pictures. I like this picture because it gives as good of a wide angle capturing as much of the area as possible, but overall still has generally good exposure because the sun is to our back and behind a little cloud cover at this time, and that's going to play an important factor later. The vintage Coke cooler here has been rusting away long before it was placed in this location, and unfortunately, or fortunately, no effort has been made to restore or preserve it. On one hand, I'm glad I took the picture because it's still possible to mostly tell what it is you're looking at. It looks both authentic due to its weathering and not due to the 1980s styling of the Coke branding. I'm pretty sure in the late 1800s, people didn't need to be told to enjoy Coca-Cola. The cocaine was going to see to it that they did. Another reason I'm glad I got the picture is that next year, more of this will fade away, and in a few years' time, the branding will be gone altogether, and the part of this old equipment that makes it interesting will likely be gone. This brings me to my two favorite pictures I've taken at this location. I feel like on one hand, they both showcase the limitations of the Nikon EM's metering system, while also producing some of the more thought-provoking pictures in this small collection. Obviously, the camera metered for the sky, and that is what it prioritized. But that's not a bad thing. If I had manual control, I probably would have metered for the building. But in all honesty, this building looks so much more interesting as a silhouette. Same with the cross and the vulture in the other picture. Obviously, the cross, and specifically the cross on a church, have their religious connotations. But in a certain way, film does too. Shooting films is, in a way, a religious experience. Not to get too churchy with this, but you have this medium that spends its entire existence in darkness. No idea where it is or what its purpose is. And for one brief moment, it's exposed to the light. And it's forever changed. It may go hours, days, weeks, months, and even years until it's developed in a bath of chemicals and its new true self is revealed. For better or worse, the experience changed it. Some pictures may do more than others to express a message. Some may be blurry and out of focus, but someone may still see it as art. Photos have a way of revealing the truth. They can show happy memories, the best of us, and at times, the worst of us. I like these two pictures, and I probably like the one of the church a touch more because they are at first glance imperfect. They are not what I intended to capture, but capture something I did. And at the end, the result, while not what I was expecting, was something I've went back to a few times and thought more and more about. And really, that's the whole purpose of photography, is to make us feel something, think something, and ultimately experience something. Anyway, that's my review of the Nikon EM. An overall fantastic camera. It has its limitations, but it also serves its purpose, and it serves it very well. It's going to maintain its place in my camera collection for a long time to come. And if you're looking for a good entry-level film SLR camera, this might be the one for you. Anyway, have a good one, and thanks for watching.